The day the SAT scores were released, Chloe Davis's name went viral. She'd scored a perfect 1600, and every major news outlet was scrambling to report on the nation's top scorer. The topic was trending so hard on Twitter that it practically broke the platform. Meanwhile, Chloe herself posted her score report on Facebook, pairing it with a photo of her kissing me. The caption read, "My boy deserves only the best, at Ethan Miller." In our class group chat, the messages started flying. Holy crap, Chloe actually got a perfect score. Is she even human? Seriously, a genius, the prettiest girl in school, and totally devoted. What a perfect combination. Ethan must have done something amazing in a past life. Your girlfriend is stunning. Amidst the flood of congratulations, one message stuck out like a sore thumb. I'm so jealous of Ethan. I'll never be worthy of a girlfriend that amazing. It was from Leo Vance. The comment from the transfer student on financial aid made the chat go quiet for a moment. I was about to reply when I saw Chloe send Leo a Zelle transfer for $9,999.99 with a simple note, "You will someday." I had always just thought Chloe was too kind. She was the type to lend her umbrella to Leo when he was caught in the rain, to secretly leave breakfast in his desk, or to send him a small fortune just because he said he was jealous. That was until the admissions officer from Harvard called, telling her that given her perfect score, they would grant her a special discretionary admission spot for a significant other. She gave them Leo's name. Afterwards, she tried to soothe me with an explanation. Ethan, Leo's family is poor. If he doesn't get into a top school, he'll be forced to go back home and work on a farm. He needs this spot more than you do, she said. Your grades are great too. You can apply to Tufts or another school near Boston, and we can still be together. She thought she had it all figured out, but she never knew. In the final moments before the application portal closed, Leo secretly logged into my account and changed my first-choice university to a community college in Ohio. My dream of Harvard was shattered, and community college was the last thing I wanted. If her love was no longer purely for me, I would rather let her go. Ethan, we've already secured your applications for the universities in Switzerland. You can head over as soon as the semester starts. My father's voice came through the phone. But are you sure about this? Chloe has been attached to you since you were kids. With her at Harvard and you in Europe, a long-distance relationship will be tough. I gripped the phone, my mind flashing back to a memory from Chloe's first birthday. Among all the toys and objects laid out for her to choose, she had toddled straight towards me, grabbing onto my leg and refusing to let go. Both our families had roared with laughter, joking that she had already picked her future husband. And after that, she was always by my side. In kindergarten, she insisted on sitting next to me. In elementary school, she waited for me every day after class. In middle school, she studied hard enough to become valedictorian just so we could be in the same honors classes. And in high school, she made it clear to everyone that I was hers. Seeing how close we were, our parents had practically arranged our engagement since we were kids. Everyone knew we were a couple. That is, until Leo showed up. He was the new transfer student on a scholarship, always eating cheap sandwiches for lunch and wearing a faded, hand-me-down uniform. When some of the other students made fun of him, Chloe was always the first to defend him. I never objected. I even backed him up a few times myself. But slowly, Leo started clinging to Chloe. He'd follow her after school, bring her breakfast, and show up at her tennis matches with a water bottle. Then came the accident. A ceiling fan in one of the classrooms came loose and fell, and Leo shoved Chloe out of the way, taking the hit himself. He ended up with 2 broken ribs and a month-long hospital stay. After that, Chloe's attitude towards him changed completely. She showered him with attention, and the way she looked at him grew softer. Now, she had even given him the Harvard admission spot. I couldn't tell if it was gratitude or if she was actually falling for him, but I had known her complete, undivided love, and this new, divided affection wasn't something I wanted. It won't be a long-distance relationship, I said softly into the phone. Dad, we're on different paths now. It's time to call off the engagement. Are you serious? My father asked, surprised. Yes, I've thought it through. There was a moment of silence on the other end, followed by a sigh. All right, you're still young, you'll meet plenty of other people. Once you're settled in Europe, we'll go to the Davis family and formally break things off. Break off what? A crisp, female voice suddenly came from behind me. I turned to see Chloe standing in the foyer, having let herself into the house at some point. She was wearing a black slip dress that highlighted her height and long legs. She looked good in anything. The sunlight streamed in from behind, outlining her delicate features. That vibrant, youthful energy of hers used to make my heart race. But looking at her now, I felt nothing but a calm emptiness. It's nothing, I said, hanging up the phone, my voice deliberately casual. Chloe didn't press. She walked over with a smile, handing me a designer garment bag. "Ethan, hurry and get changed. We're going to the senior banquet together." She leaned in, her voice dropping to a whisper. "I picked out the most handsome suit for you." I took the bag from her. The banquet had been planned for months, and I knew that after I left for Europe, I wouldn't have many chances to see my teachers and friends again. I decided to treat it as a final goodbye. I went upstairs to change, but when I came back down, I saw Leo already sitting in Chloe's car. "Ethan?" Leo mumbled awkwardly, his fingers twisting the hem of his shirt. The most jarring part was that he was wearing a suit from the same designer collection as mine, just in a different color. Chloe walked over to explain. "When I was buying your suit, I figured Leo probably didn't have one, so I just grabbed one for him too." She paused, reaching up to run her fingers through my hair with a placating tone. "Ethan, don't read too much into it." I tilted my head away, a bitter smile touching my lips. There was a time when guys were constantly trying to get Chloe's attention because of how beautiful she was, but she only ever had eyes for me. She never gave anyone else a second glance, let alone worried about whether some other guy had a suit to wear. At the hotel ballroom, Leo was his usual timid, insecure self. Chloe hovered around him all night, putting food on his plate, pouring his soda, and even smiling indulgently whenever his eyes lit up at tasting something new. Seeing that smile directed at him sent a sharp pain through my chest. "Ethan, let's have a drink," a few of my friends called out, coming over to toast. I'm a lightweight, but I didn't want to ruin the mood. Just as I lifted my glass, a slender hand plucked it from my grasp. "He can't drink, so I'll take it for him," Chloe announced, downing the champagne in one gulp, which earned a chorus of whoops from everyone. "Chloe, half the school wants to toast the prom king tonight. Are you going to drink for him every time?" our class president joked. "You'll be passed out before dinner's over." Chloe's eyes curved into a smile as she pulled me behind her protectively. "So what if I do? As long as my boyfriend doesn't have to drink, I'm fine with it." The table erupted again, the room buzzing with that chaotic energy unique to high school seniors. After the teachers left, things got rowdier. Someone suggested a game of truth or dare. Chloe lost the first few rounds. For her first dare, she had to show everyone her pinned iMessage conversation. My name, Ethan, was right at the top, followed by a red heart emoji. The second dare was to show her camera roll. It was filled with pictures of me. My profile as I slept at my desk, my hair catching the wind as I ran on the track, the contented smile on my face when I was holding a milkshake. For the third dare, she had to open her notes app. It was a long, detailed list of all my favorite things. Hates cilantro, likes his coffee black, gets a stomachache if he skips breakfast, allergic to mangoes. There was even a note to herself that read, "When Ethan's mad, check my own attitude first." "That is so sweet," one of the girls exclaimed, practically swooning. "But you guys won't be at the same college and Ethan's so handsome. What if another girl snags him?" Chloe laughed, full of confidence. "Who would dare? Besides, I've already helped Ethan get into a university right near Boston, so he'll be right where I can see him. Right, Ethan?" A bitter smile touched my lips. That was the plan anyway. But now, my application had been changed by Leo to a community college halfway across the country. I glanced over at Leo in the corner. His face was sheet white, his hands clenched into tight fists. I almost had to laugh. If he was so terrified of being caught, why did he do it in the first place? I was about to say something, but the game moved on, and a clearly distracted Leo lost the next round. His dare was to kiss the girl sitting to his left. Unfortunately for him, that was Jessica, a girl famous for her fiery temper. The color drained from Leo's face. He quietly asked if he could get a different dare, but everyone shouted him down. "No way, you have to do it." Leo squeezed his eyes shut and leaned in, trembling. Just as their lips were about to touch, Chloe suddenly stood up, pulled Jessica aside, and kissed Leo herself. "Breathe," she whispered to him. The entire table fell silent. I felt a vice grip my heart, the pain so intense it was hard to breathe. When the kiss ended, Leo's face was bright red. Chloe finally offered an explanation. "I just remembered, I was sitting there earlier, so technically the person to Leo's left was me." "Okay, dare's over." The atmosphere turned awkwardly silent. Everyone was looking at me, their expressions a mixture of pity and embarrassment. I didn't want to be the center of this spectacle. The banquet was almost over anyway, so I stood up and left. As I stepped outside, the cool night air hit my face, and I realized it was wet with tears. "Ethan," Chloe ran after me, grabbing my wrist. "I'm sorry. Are you mad?" Her cautious, timid expression almost made me laugh. "What would I be mad about? That kiss?" she started, her voice laced with an uncharacteristic panic. Leo really didn't want to kiss her. I was just helping him out. It was just a kiss, it didn't mean anything. "Please don't be mad, okay?" I'm not mad, I said, pulling my hand away with a small smile. I looked her in the eye. From now on, you can kiss him however you want, for as long as you want. It has nothing to do with me. Chloe froze, the color draining from her face. What are you trying to say? I looked at her calmly. What else could I mean? I just didn't love her anymore. Whatever she did from now on was her business, not mine. I was about to officially break up with her when Leo came running out after us, his voice shaking. Ethan, I'm so sorry. This is all my fault. He kept bowing, his thin frame trembling in the night breeze. He looked so pathetic it almost made me feel like the bad guy. Please don't be mad at Chloe, he pleaded. If you have to be mad at someone, be mad at me. Chloe rushed to his side, steadying him. What are you doing? I already explained everything to Ethan. He's not mad. I laughed and nodded in agreement. That's right. I'm not mad. Leo finally seemed to relax. Okay, well, I'll get going then, he said meekly. But Chloe grabbed his arm. Wait, it's too late for you to go home by yourself. I'll give you a ride. Leo's eyes lit up, but he feigned hesitation, glancing at me. But what about Ethan? We live in opposite directions. Don't worry about him, Chloe said casually. His driver will be here to get him soon. With that, she pulled Leo into her car. Before driving off, she rolled down the window and called out, Ethan, be safe. Call me when you get home. I stood frozen on the curb, watching her taillights disappear into the darkness. She had forgotten. My driver had a family emergency and was on leave for the week. I had told her just a few days ago. She used to remember every tiny detail about me, from the fact that I hated the stems of cilantro to which medicine I took for an upset stomach, to my favorite color for a tie. Now, she couldn't even remember something this simple. Rain began to fall. I stood outside the hotel, trying to get an Uber for what felt like an eternity, but none were available. Eventually, I gave up and started walking home in the downpour. The night was dark and the sidewalks were slick. Halfway home, a guy on an electric scooter lost control and slammed into me, sending me to the pavement. My knee hit the concrete hard, and blood mixed with the rain running down my leg. The rider took off without a second glance. I had no choice but to limp the rest of the way. 3 hours later, I finally made it home. I gritted my teeth through the pain as I cleaned and bandaged my knee. Just then, my phone screen lit up with a message from Chloe. Are you home yet? I didn't want to answer. I turned my phone off, took a shower, and collapsed into bed. The next morning, the doorbell wouldn't stop ringing. I dragged my exhausted body to the door to find Chloe standing outside, looking frantic. You're home. Why didn't you answer my text last night? I turned and walked back inside. I got hurt, went to bed early, didn't see it. It was only then that she noticed the bandage on my leg. Her brow furrowed in concern. What happened? My driver's on leave. I got hit by a scooter walking home. Chloe froze, finally remembering about my driver. A wave of guilt washed over her face. Ethan, why didn't you call me? I looked up at her. If I had called, would you have turned around and come back for me? Of course I would have. And what if Leo had gotten into some kind of trouble at the exact same moment? Would I still have been your first priority? She hesitated for a second before nodding. Of course. I gave a slight, humorless smile and said nothing more. In the past, she would have said, of course, without a moment's hesitation. Back then, she only had eyes for me. She could tell I was upset from a single frown. Now, that 1 second of doubt told me everything I needed to know. Chloe couldn't tell if I was angry. Usually, when I was mad, I'd give her the silent treatment for a few days, acting moody until she coaxed me out of it. But now, the fact that I was still talking to her seemed to make her even more anxious. Ethan, let's go to the aquarium, she said suddenly, her voice sweet and placating, as if she was desperate to make amends. I shook my head. I don't feel like it, but I already bought the tickets, she insisted, taking my hand and gently stroking my wrist the way she always did when she was trying to win me over. Come on, you've been wanting to see the killer whale show, haven't you? She half coaxed, half dragged me to her car. But when I opened the passenger door, I saw Leo sitting in the back. Ethan, he mumbled, looking embarrassed and fidgeting with his shirt, as if he was afraid I'd be upset. Chloe instinctively moved to stand slightly in front of Leo. I saw on his Facebook that he wanted to go too, so I invited him to come with us, she explained. I watched her shield him like that, and the whole situation felt so absurd it was almost funny. I didn't say a word, just silently got into the passenger seat. For the rest of the day, Chloe used the excuse that Leo's never done any of this before to drag him from one ride to the next. She rode the carousel with him, buckled his seatbelt on the roller coaster, and even held his hand when he got nervous. People around us kept looking at them with admiration. Look at that young couple, I heard someone say. They're so sweet together. I felt like I was invisible, just silently trailing behind them. The girl whose world once revolved entirely around me was gone. Finally, it was time for the killer whale show. The announcer picked 2 people from the audience at random to participate, and our names were called. But Leo was staring with such longing that Chloe turned to me and whispered, "Ethan, it's his first time here. Can we let him do it instead?" I didn't say anything, which she took as a yes. So Chloe and Leo went up on stage. One of the activities involved them having to kiss for a photo right at the peak of the whale's jump. The moment the announcer explained it, Leo's face turned beet red, and the crowd started cheering them on. Chloe glanced at him, and without any hesitation, she cupped the back of his head and kissed him. The stadium erupted. I sat there in the stands, feeling that invisible hand squeezing my heart again, so tight I could barely breathe. If the first kiss was to get him out of an awkward situation, what was this one for? After the show, Chloe tried to explain, but I cut her off. "I get it," I said flatly. "You didn't want to hold up the show." She just stared at me, a look of pure panic I'd never seen before spreading across her face. That evening, we went to the main plaza to wait for the closing fireworks display. Chloe was hoping to use my favorite part of the day to smooth things over, but then disaster struck. One of the fireworks malfunctioned and exploded on the ground, sending sparks flying into the crowd. Chaos erupted. In the ensuing panic and shoving, I lost my balance at the top of a wide staircase and was about to tumble down. Chloe instinctively reached for me, but at that exact moment, a terrified scream came from behind her. "Chloe!" It was Leo. She glanced back at me for a fraction of a second, then turned without hesitation and ran towards Leo. I watched her go, my heart feeling like it was being ripped in two. Then I lost my footing completely and tumbled down the stairs, getting trampled by the fleeing crowd. Luckily, a kind stranger helped me to my feet. By the time Chloe came back, shielding Leo, I was covered in bruises and scrapes. "Ethan!" she cried, her voice full of pain as she reached out to hug me. I sidestepped her embrace. My voice was frighteningly calm. "I'm fine. You should take Leo home." There was no way she was going to do that. She told Leo to get his own Uber and insisted on driving me to the hospital. After an examination, the doctor said I might have a concussion and needed to stay for observation. Chloe refused to leave my side, no matter how much I told her to go. But just as we finished the admission paperwork, her phone rang. It was Leo. "Chloe, the power and water are out at my place," he whimpered. Chloe frowned, looking at me hesitantly. "Go," I said calmly. "Ethan, I'm fine. The nurses are here." She finally stood up. "I'll be right back," she promised, rushing out the door. As she left, I watched her go and called out her name. "Chloe." She turned. "What is it?" I looked at her and a memory surfaced. She had been away for a debate tournament once and had called me. Just from the sound of my voice, she could tell I was sick with a fever. She skipped the final round and drove all night to get back and take care of me. Now, she was leaving me seriously injured for another guy. For a split second, I wanted to ask her, "Do you still love me?" But as the words formed, I realized the answer didn't matter anymore. "It's nothing," I said. "Go." Whether she loved me or not, I didn't care anymore. I was going to let her go and let go of everything we'd had. I was in the hospital for 3 days. In that time, I saw 17 Facebook posts from Leo. Chloe took me out for Korean barbecue. Photo. Chloe's slender fingers placing a piece of brisket in his bowl. First time bungee jumping. So nervous. Photo. Chloe standing on the platform, looking at him with a gentle expression that was once reserved only for me. Chloe said she'll take good care of me while I have this cold. Photo. Chloe sitting by his bedside, stirring a bowl of soup. I calmly scrolled past them. I guess when something hurts you enough times, you eventually go numb. The day I was discharged, I booked an appointment at my physical therapy clinic. The moment I pushed open the glass door, I heard a familiar voice. "Ethan?" It was Chloe, standing at the reception desk with a nervous-looking Leo beside her. She looked flustered for a second. "You're out of the hospital? Does it still hurt?" "I'm fine now," I answered coolly, my eyes landing on Leo. Chloe seemed to relax. "Leo's never been to a place like this, so I brought him to try out a posture correction session," she explained. She paused. "Actually, I don't know much about it either. Could you show him the ropes?" I didn't want to make a scene, so I just nodded. We went into the training room together, and my therapist brought out my customized equipment to start the injury assessment. Leo watched from the side, his voice dripping with envy. "Private sessions must be expensive. It must be nice to be rich. I've never had anything like a personal trainer." Chloe frowned. "Don't be envious. You can just work with my trainer today." Leo quickly waved his hands in protest. "Oh no, I couldn't. I'm not worthy of that kind of service." "Don't be ridiculous," Chloe said firmly. You deserve the best. I closed my eyes and spoke to my therapist. Can you please get them a separate room? I'd like some quiet. Chloe looked taken aback. The custom equipment, I can just buy it for him. That's not necessary, I said, my voice weary. I'll have them set him up with an identical set. I finally managed to get them to leave. After my session, I changed and went straight home, not waiting for them. I had barely walked in the door when it was thrown open. Ethan, Chloe stormed in, her face like ice, and grabbed my wrist. What did you say to your therapist? Why did Leo get hurt during his session? Her grip was painful, and for a second I was just confused. What are you talking about? I told you, I'm only looking out for him because he saved my life, she hissed, her voice tight with fury. You're the one I love. If you're upset, take it out on me. Why would you try to hurt him? I stared at her, incredulous. I didn't do anything to him. The therapists here are professionals. They would never intentionally injure a client. This clinic is owned by your family. Chloe shot back with a cold sneer. You could have them do whatever you want with a single phone call. A sharp pain shot through my chest. Is that really the kind of person she thought I was? I opened my mouth to argue, but no words came out. Taking my silence as a confession, she started dragging me out the door. What are you doing? I yelled, trying to pull away. She didn't say a word, just sped through traffic with a grim expression until we screeched to a halt at the hospital. She dragged me to Leo's room. Apologize, she ordered. I looked down at my wrist, still in her tight grip, and my eyes started to burn. I remembered a time I sprained my ankle during a basketball game, and she had cried because she felt so bad for me. She would never have treated me like this back then. I didn't do anything wrong, I said. I'm not apologizing. Leo quickly tried to play the peacemaker. It's okay. If Ethan doesn't want to apologize, it's fine. I'll be out of the hospital in a few days. This only made Chloe angrier. Look at him, and then look at yourself. How can you be so cruel as to keep hurting him like this? Her eyes suddenly landed on the silver chain I wore around my neck. Since you won't apologize, you can give him this necklace as compensation. I went rigid, my hand instinctively flying to the chain. Do you even remember what this is? It was the first gift she ever gave me, a symbol of our commitment. She said it was to lock me down forever. And now she wanted me to take it off and give it to Leo? She had clearly forgotten. It's just a necklace, she said dismissively. I'll buy you a better one later. Leo is being generous enough to forgive you, and you can't even give him a small gift? I took a deep breath, ripped the necklace from my neck, and threw it at Leo. Here. And with that, Chloe, I was giving you up too. I turned and walked out of the room without a backward glance. Over the next few days, I started packing for Switzerland. The Chloe who once couldn't go a single day without seeing me hadn't shown up in a week. I didn't have to guess where she was. She was at the hospital with Leo. A week later, she finally appeared at my door. Ethan, she said, her voice laced with a weary resignation. Leo feels really bad about how tense things have been between us. He wants to take us out to dinner to try and smooth things over. I didn't even look up from the shirt I was folding. I'm not going, she sighed. You're the one who was in the wrong, but somehow I'm the one who has to come here and beg you? My hands stilled. I looked up at her. What did I do wrong? She was speechless for a moment, then her voice softened. Okay, fine. I'm sorry, all right? Just stop being difficult. Leo has been feeling so guilty about this all week. In the end, she managed to drag me to the restaurant. Leo was already there, and he silently handed a menu to Chloe. She took it, her long, elegant fingers dancing across the pages as she expertly ordered for the table. Szechuan chicken, spicy boiled fish, mapo tofu. All of Leo's favorites. I watched her order, my mind drifting back to how it used to be. She would always ask me what I wanted first, and she knew everything I couldn't eat by heart. Now, she'd even forgotten that spicy food messes with my stomach. When the food arrived, I didn't touch my chopsticks. Ethan, Leo said, staring at me intently. You're not eating. Are you still mad at me? Chloe frowned. Ethan, I thought we agreed you weren't mad anymore. I'm not mad, I said, setting down my chopsticks, but I have a sensitive stomach. How am I supposed to eat any of this? Chloe froze. She looked at the table, covered in dishes swimming in chili oil, then back at me, her expression a complex mix of emotions. I'm sorry, she whispered. I forgot. She was about to call the waiter to order something else when the large decorative light fixture on the ceiling suddenly crashed down. With a deafening bang, it landed right on top of Leo and me. Ethan, Chloe screamed. For a split second, she started towards me, but then Leo started crying out. Chloe, it hurts so much. She hesitated, just for a second, and in that second, I watched her turn away from me and rush to help Leo instead. Somebody call an ambulance, she yelled over her shoulder, not even looking back at me. Help me get him to a hospital. I was covered in cuts from the shattered glass, but all I could do was watch as she cradled Leo and ran out. Through the searing pain, a memory from when I was 12 surfaced. Chloe and I had gone hiking, and I'd slipped and fallen down a steep embankment. She had scrambled down after me like a woman possessed, searching the woods for 3 hours until she found me. I was delirious with a fever by then, and she just kept repeating, "Ethan, don't be scared. I'm right here." Now, in a similar crisis, she had chosen someone else. My vision started to go dark. The last thing I saw before I passed out was the back of Chloe's head as she ran away from me. The next thing I knew, I was in a hospital, groggily hearing a nurse's voice. "Mr. Miller? Mr. Miller, can you hear me?" I forced my eyes open and realized I was still on a gurney in the hallway. No one had come to treat my injuries yet. The nurse looked apologetic. "I'm very sorry, sir, but Miss Davis has requested that all available doctors attend to Mr. Vance. Unless you can call her and ask her to spare a few, I'm afraid we'll have to transfer you to another hospital." A sharp pain, not physical this time, shot through me. I couldn't help but smile bitterly. This hospital was owned by the Davis family. There was a time when I had a simple cold, and Chloe had insisted on calling in the hospital's top specialists. Now, all of that concern was directed at someone else. I knew I was in no condition to be transferred. I struggled to sit up, my hands shaking and covered in blood as I dialed Chloe's number. I called once, twice, a third time. It went to voicemail every time. By the 10th try, I suddenly remembered that my friend Ryan's uncle was a surgeon. "Hey, Ryan," I managed to say, my voice barely a whisper. "Can you ask your uncle to come to the Davis Memorial Hospital? I need surgery." That was the last thing I said before I blacked out again. When I woke up again, the surgery was over. Ryan was sitting by my bed, frowning. "What the hell happened, man? You get injured in Chloe's family's hospital, and I'm the one who has to call in a surgeon for you." He clenched his fists. "Where's Chloe? If she knew how bad it was, she'd be losing her mind." I looked at him, remembering how I'd sprained my ankle last winter. Chloe had insisted on calling in every orthopedic specialist in the city for consultations, all through the night. She had practically carried me all over the hospital, and when the doctor finally told her it was just a minor sprain, she still insisted I be admitted overnight. But that Chloe, the one who cared so much, was gone. She had disappeared that summer, right before Leo came into our lives. I was about to say something when Ryan's phone rang. "It's my grandma's birthday party today. I have to go," he said, wiping a tear from his eye. "You get some rest, Ethan. I'll come back and check on you later." I nodded. "Thanks, man. I owe you one." After Ryan left, I could faintly hear the nurses chatting at their station. "Miss Davis is being so sweet to that Mr. Vance. She's even feeding him his meals herself." I know, right? It was just a few cuts, but she was so worried she stayed with him all night. I slowly closed my eyes as a silent tear slid down my cheek. For the rest of my hospital stay, I was alone. I changed my own bandages, ate my meals by myself, and spent hours just staring out the window at the trees. The day I was finally discharged, it was my 18th birthday. My parents were out of the country on business, but they had arranged for a party to be catered and decorated at our house. I stood at the door in a beige suit, greeting guests, when I saw Chloe walking up the driveway with Leo in tow. She said something to Leo, getting him settled on a couch in the corner, then walked over to me. "Ethan," she said, her eyes sparkling, "you look so handsome tonight." She reached for my hand, but I moved it away. Chloe froze for a second. "What's wrong? Are you still mad?" She lowered her voice. "You're from a wealthy family, Ethan. When you get hurt, there are always people to take care of you. But Leo is different. He only has me." "I'm not mad," I cut in. She let out a breath of relief and pulled a small velvet box from her pocket. "I got you a present. It's that watch you've been wanting." I took it without a glance and set it on a nearby table. Her smile froze on her face. "What is wrong with you lately?" Her voice was trembling. "If you're mad, just say it. Don't treat me like this. You're really hurting me." I looked at her, at the pain on her face, and I almost laughed. This hurt her? What would she do if I told her we were done for good? I was about to speak when a loud crash echoed from the other side of the room, followed by guests screaming. I hurried over, and the sight that greeted me made my breath catch in my throat. The three-tiered tower of presents my parents had arranged was in a heap on the floor, expensive gifts spilling from their boxes. The champagne tower next to it was shattered, champagne soaking into the carpet, and my custom-made birthday cake was a flattened, smeared mess of frosting and crumbs. And in the middle of it all stood Leo, wringing his hands. "I didn't mean to," he stammered, his voice shaking. I just heard that if you put your gift at the very top of the pile, it brings the birthday boy good luck. I was trying to reach, and I guess I just lost my footing. I stared at the ruins of the party my parents had so carefully planned, my chest tight with anger. I took a step forward. Leo, you. Before I could finish, Chloe moved to stand in front of him. Ethan, don't. It's his first time at a party like this. He doesn't know any better. Please, just be the bigger person. His first time. I laughed. A cold, sharp sound, my voice shaking with rage. His first time at a physical therapist, his first time at a fancy party, his first kiss. How many more firsts are there going to be? I gestured wildly at the wreckage. My parents planned this for me. It's completely ruined, and you want me to be the bigger person. Ryan, who had been watching from the side, couldn't stay quiet any longer. Give me a break with the poor innocent me act, he scoffed. You're 18 years old. You know damn well you don't climb on a tower of presents. You did that on purpose. The color drained from Leo's face, and his eyes welled up with tears as he stared at the floor. Ryan, Chloe's voice was ice. Apologize to him, now. Why the hell should I? Ryan shot back. If you don't, Chloe said, her voice dangerously low, I will have my father ruin your family's business. I snapped my head up, unable to believe what I was hearing. She would actually threaten one of my oldest friends for Leo? Chloe, my voice shook. You wouldn't dare. I glared at her, speaking each word with precision. Today is my birthday. I didn't invite Leo. Ryan said nothing wrong, and he is not apologizing. So either Leo apologizes, or he can get the hell out of my house. Seeing the genuine fury in my eyes, Chloe started to say something placating, but Leo had already bolted out the door. Leo, Chloe cried, her voice filled with panic. Without a second glance at me, she ran after him. In her haste, she knocked over a decorative stand, adding to the chaos. I just stood there, watching them disappear, the pain in my chest so intense it felt like I couldn't breathe. There was a time when a single frown from me would have had her worried all day. Now I had laid it all out on the line, and she ran off without a second thought. Ryan was fuming. Is she insane? How could she treat you like this? For him. I just shook my head and bent down to pick up the shattered pieces of a photo frame from the floor. It was a gift from Chloe last year, a collage of pictures of us from the time we were kids. Now the glass was shattered, and the photos were smeared with frosting, just like our relationship damaged beyond repair. In the days that followed, I completely ignored Chloe. My phone screen kept lighting up with her texts. Ethan, please don't be mad. I bought you a present to make up for it. I got tickets to that movie you wanted to see. Want to go? I ignored every single one. Finally, she showed up at my house. Ethan, she said, standing in my doorway with a deep frown. How long are you going to keep this up over one little thing? I've tried apologizing. I've tried being nice. Nothing is working. I closed the book I was reading. I didn't ask you to apologize, and I don't need you to be nice to me, I said calmly. If you're getting impatient, you can go hang out with Leo. I don't mind. A look of panic crossed her face. What are you talking about? You're my boyfriend. I know I've been spending a lot of time with Leo, and I gave him the Harvard spot, but that's just because I feel sorry for him. He has no one, and I wanted to repay him for saving me. Her voice softened. Since it bothers you so much, I'll stop. I've done enough for him. I won't see him anymore. Okay? I looked up at her, about to ask if she actually believed the words coming out of her own mouth, when her phone rang. It was Leo. Chloe, he said, his voice thick with tears. I'm not going to college. I'm just going to go back home and work on the farm. The color drained from Chloe's face. What? Why? Ethan won't forgive you because of me, Leo sobbed. If that's the case, I should just leave. I don't want to be a problem for you two anymore. The moment the call ended, Chloe was in a full-blown panic. She grabbed my arm and started dragging me towards the door. Ethan, we have to go talk to him. We have to tell him we've made up. My injuries still hadn't fully healed, so I couldn't easily pull away. She dragged me all the way to the rundown neighborhood where Leo lived. When we got there, we saw Leo being shoved into a beat-up truck by a drunk, middle-aged man. Attaboy, the man slurred, slapping Leo's cheek. Finally realized you're good for something. Your work on the farm will keep me in booze money. Chloe ran forward. Let him go, she yelled. Seeing his meal ticket about to walk away, Leo's father grabbed a tire iron from the truck bed. Get lost. He's my son. I'll do what I want with him. Chloe, who had never encountered someone so crude in her life, signaled for her bodyguards to step in while she grabbed Leo's hand. Come with me. But Leo pulled away. No, I can't. You and Ethan are only fighting because of me. The more he acted like a noble martyr, the more her heart broke for him, and the more determined she was to save him. Let him go. Leo's father roared, his eyes wild. He's my ticket out of here. He suddenly pulled a knife from his belt and lunged. In the ensuing chaos, Leo shoved me hard. I felt a sharp, searing pain as the knife plunged into my side. The last thing I heard was Chloe's blood-curdling scream. Ethan. When I woke up, Chloe was sitting by my hospital bed, with dark circles under her eyes. Ethan, you're awake? She asked, her voice softer than I'd heard it in a long time. Does it still hurt? Are you hungry? I can have someone bring you anything you want. Where's Leo? I asked, my voice weak. Her expression tightened. Don't be mad at him. He didn't mean to push you. Things were just so chaotic, she said quickly. He feels terrible about it. He's been praying for you constantly. I closed my eyes, a familiar ache spreading through my chest. I had asked a simple question, and she had launched into a full-throated defense. So much for her promise to stop seeing him. Ethan, she said, gently taking my hand. When you're better, we can. I'm tired, I said, pulling my hand away and turning to face the wall. Chloe stayed at the hospital with me for the next few days, right up until I was discharged. She was about to drive me home when her phone rang. It was Leo and he was crying. Chloe, some guys are harassing me at the coffee shop where I work. She glanced at me, hesitating, before finally saying, I'm on my way. I watched her rush out the door and couldn't help but let out a bitter, self-mocking laugh. The night before my flight to Switzerland, I was finishing my packing when Chloe showed up unannounced. She saw my suitcases and a soft smile touched her lips. All packed already? I was going to come help you. You know how you always forget things. She reached up and ruffled my hair. We can head up to Boston for orientation tomorrow. I gave a tight-lipped smile. She still had no idea I wasn't going to Boston. Not only that, but I was about to end things with her for good. My orientation is a few days later than Harvard's, I said coolly. You should just go ahead and take Leo up there first. She frowned. No way. I don't want you going up there by yourself. Leo gets nervous easily, and he's never been to Boston, I said calmly. You can take him up, help him get settled, maybe show him around for a few days. She looked surprised that I was being so understanding, but also visibly relieved. Okay, I'll take him up for a few days then. Just let me know when your flight gets in, and I'll come pick you up. Okay. She looked like she wanted to say more, but I told her she should get some rest for her flight tomorrow and ushered her out. Outside, she stared at the closed door, a flicker of unease in her eyes. But then she seemed to shake it off. Once we were both in Boston, she'd have plenty of time to win me over. The next day at the airport, I was dragging my suitcase towards the international terminal when I saw them. Across the hall at the domestic check-in counter were Chloe and Leo. Chloe was adjusting the cap on Leo's head, her long fingers gently brushing his hair. Her expression was soft, and he was looking down at her with an expression of pure adoration. I quickly ducked behind a pillar. Just then, Chloe frowned and glanced in my direction. What's wrong? Leo asked. I thought I saw Ethan. She started to walk towards me, but Leo grabbed her arm. Didn't Ethan say he was coming in a few days? Why would he be here now? You must be mistaken, he said, his voice soft and pleading. They're about to start boarding, and I've never been on a plane before. I need you with me. Chloe hesitated for a moment, then turned and walked with Leo towards the gate. I stepped out from behind the pillar and watched them disappear into the crowd. Only then did I turn and head towards my own gate in the international terminal. Two planes took off at roughly the same time, one headed for Boston, the other for the far side of the Atlantic. Just like Chloe and me, headed in completely opposite directions. When my plane landed in Geneva, I deleted the last photo of Chloe from my phone. From that moment on, I was leaving the girl I had known for more than a decade behind and starting a new life. After grabbing my luggage, I took a taxi to the university. The unfamiliar streets outside the window slowly started to look like a new home. I stood at the entrance to the campus, suitcase in hand, and took a deep breath. The autumn air here didn't smell like home, but it was crisp and clean, and it felt like a fresh start. The department's orientation for new graduate students was scheduled for that evening. After unpacking, I changed into a simple t-shirt and found a seat in the back of the auditorium. I watched the presentation on the screen, my fingers tracing the cover of my notebook. And now, please join me in welcoming Professor Evelyn Reed, who will say a few words to our incoming class. A round of applause followed as a woman in a light gray pantsuit walked onto the stage. She was tall and carried herself with confidence, with sharp features, thin-framed glasses, and eyes that were warm but intelligent. From the whispers of the students next to me, I gathered that Professor Reed was a prodigy who had skipped multiple grades, earned her PhD, and become a full professor at the age of 23. When she spoke, her voice was clear and calm. Welcome, everyone. Rather than your professor, I hope you'll come to think of me as a colleague on your academic journey." My attention, which had been wandering, snapped back into focus, and I listened intently. Her speech wasn't the usual stiff welcome address. Instead, she shared a few stories about her own experiences when she first arrived in Switzerland as a student, even laughing about some of her more embarrassing mistakes. The other new students laughed along with her, and the formal atmosphere in the room began to loosen up. After her speech, there was a casual mixer. I was looking over my CV when a shadow fell across the page. I looked up and found myself looking directly into Professor Reed's smiling eyes. "Ethan Miller?" she asked, holding a printout of the new student roster with her finger resting on my name. "I was just looking over your admissions essay. Your proposed research topic is very interesting." I was momentarily stunned, then quickly stood up. "Hello, Professor Reed. Please, no need to be so formal," she said, shaking my hand. Her eyes scanned my essay. "The project my team is working on right now touches on some of the areas you mentioned. Perhaps we could discuss it." There was no condescension in her voice, only genuine interest and the appreciation of a peer. My tense nerves began to unwind, and I started to explain my ideas. We fell into an easy conversation, standing in a corner of the auditorium and talking for nearly an hour. The more I spoke, the more engrossed I became, completely forgetting my initial nervousness. Outside, the sky was growing dark. "I'm so sorry, Professor," I said, suddenly realizing that the auditorium was nearly empty. "I must have taken up a lot of your time." She just smiled and shook her head. "Not at all. I'm just glad to see such a passionate student in our new class." With that, she turned and headed for the campus coffee shop. "I'm grabbing a coffee. Would you like to join me?" A few minutes later, she handed me a latte, the warmth of the cup seeping into my cold fingers. "I know it can be overwhelming when you first arrive," she said. "There's an international symposium in Zurich next week. Would you be interested in attending with my research team? It would be a good chance to network, and it might be helpful for your research." I held the warm cup, looking into her sincere eyes, and felt a warmth spread through my chest that had nothing to do with the coffee. "Yes," I said, a small smile forming on my lips. "Thank you, Professor. I'd like that very much." As we walked out of the building together, dusk was settling over the campus. The evening breeze ruffled my hair, and as I smoothed it down, I glanced over and saw her looking at the old clock tower in the distance. Her profile was soft and gentle in the warm glow of the lamplight. My phone was silent in my pocket. I had blocked Chloe's number and all her social media accounts weeks ago. No one from my old life could bother me now. Holding the warm coffee, listening to her talk about the details of the upcoming symposium, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't felt in a long time. For the first time, I felt like maybe I could actually heal here, that I could finally start to move on. I took a sip of my coffee, and the sweet warmth spread all the way to my heart. After joining Professor Reed's research group, my life became a whirlwind of experiments, data analysis, and reading. The lab became my second home. Sometimes I would look up from my work and be startled to see that night had fallen hours ago. Her office was right next door, and she seemed to be just as busy as I was, often working late into the night alongside me. One evening, we were calibrating a digital model, checking data on her computer screen. Moonlight filtered through the blinds, casting dappled shadows across the blueprints on her desk. I reached for my coffee cup and accidentally knocked it over with my elbow. Dark brown liquid spilled across the desk, soaking the edge of the blueprint and blurring the precise measurements I had spent hours drawing. "Oh no!" I cried out, ignoring the sharp pain in my now scraped elbow. I frantically grabbed for napkins, but I only succeeded in smudging the ink further. I had pulled 3 all-nighters to finish that draft, and in my panic, my voice started to shake. "Easy now." A warm, soft hand gently covered mine. I hadn't even realized Professor Reed had come to stand behind me. She wasn't looking at the ruined drawing. She was looking at my arm. "You're bleeding. Let me clean that up for you," she said, her voice full of concern as she got out the first aid kit. "But the blueprint," I started to say, but she cut me off, pulling a fresh sheet from a file cabinet. "I saved a digital copy last night. We can just print a new one." After she had bandaged my elbow, she calmly handed me a wipe for my hands. I looked up and met her gaze. She was standing very close, and the faint, clean scent of her perfume mixed with the familiar smell of the lab was surprisingly comforting. "Here, let me," she said, gently taking the pen from my hand and sitting in the chair next to me. As she searched her computer for the file, our shoulders brushed, and I could feel her warm breath against my ear. I tightened my grip on the wipe, a strange heat creeping up my neck. I felt a pleasant, unfamiliar warmth spreading through my chest. A few days later, over the weekend, I got a text from her. There's a special exhibit on medieval architecture at the City Museum. They have some original fresco sketches that might be relevant to your research. Would you like to go together? I texted back almost immediately, yes. The light in the gallery was soft, illuminating the beautiful paintings that lined the walls. I stopped in front of one in particular. It depicted a Gothic arch window, the stained glass so vibrant it seemed to glow, the details so fine you could see the individual leaves on the vines growing in the cracks of the stone. I was completely captivated, my fingers unconsciously tracing the curve of the arch in the air. You like this one? Evelyn's voice came from behind me. I turned to see her holding a brochure from the exhibit, a smile on her face. I had a feeling you'd be interested in this period. These frescoes have a lot in common with that side project you were telling me about. She had remembered a detail from a casual conversation we'd had weeks ago. A strange feeling fluttered in my chest. I looked up, surprised, and met her smiling eyes. For some reason, my heart skipped a beat. I quickly looked away, pretending to read the plaque next to the painting, but I could feel my ears burning. My relationship with Chloe had been passionate and intense, like the summer sun. But Evelyn's quiet kindness was like a gentle spring rain, seeping into my heart without me even realizing it. Look here, she said, pointing to the painting. This support structure. Isn't it remarkably similar to the one you were modeling for your pagoda restoration project? I leaned in to get a closer look, our heads close together. Our quiet discussion was the only sound in the gallery. Every so often our arms would brush, and I would pull away as if I'd gotten an electric shock. But I couldn't stop myself from sneaking glances at her focused expression as she explained the details of the painting. As we left the museum, the setting sun was painting the clouds in shades of orange and pink. There's a nice cafe just around the corner, Evelyn said. Want to grab a coffee? I brought that book on pigment analysis we were talking about. I nodded. The evening breeze felt cool on my face, and I felt the last of my defenses melting away in the presence of this kind, thoughtful woman. Meanwhile, back in Boston, Chloe was walking through the airport, pulling Leo's suitcase behind her. Chloe, look at that building. It's amazing, Leo exclaimed, grabbing her sleeve and pointing, his fingers brushing against her wrist. She followed his gaze, and for a moment, she was lost in a memory. She had brought me here last fall for a competition, and I had stood in this very spot, marveling at the architecture. But I had also held my water bottle up high, making her stand on her toes to reach it, and had used my own body to shield her from the afternoon sun. She glanced down at her phone. Her last message to me, sent right before she boarded her flight, was still unanswered. Ethan, when are you coming up? Let me know your orientation date and I'll pick you up from the airport. Let's get your stuff to the dorm, she said to Leo, shaking herself from her reverie. As she helped him make his bed, Leo sat in a nearby chair, watching her. You're so good to me, Chloe, he said. I wish you could be this nice to me forever. She didn't answer, just pushed the folded comforter to the head of the bed. That evening, as they were walking around campus, Leo suddenly took her hand. Chloe, there's a welcome bonfire for new students tonight. I'm kind of nervous about going by myself. I'll go with you, she said, giving his hand a reassuring squeeze. Just as she said it, her phone vibrated in her pocket. Her heart leaped, thinking it was me, but it was just a weather alert. At the bonfire that night, the fire crackled merrily, surrounded by the loud, cheerful chatter of new students. Leo held a roasted marshmallow to her lips, and as she took a bite, she accidentally nipped his finger. He snatched his hand back as if he'd been burned, the tips of his ears turning bright red. A few people nearby whistled and cheered. She offered a weak smile, but her eyes kept darting back to her phone. Still no word from Ethan? Leo asked. Is he still mad at you? Chloe frowned at her blank screen. No, that's not like him. He doesn't stay mad like this. Oh, Leo said, looking down, his long eyelashes hiding his expression. Maybe his phone just died. I'm sure it's nothing to worry about. She couldn't focus on the party. She found a quiet, dark corner and leaned against a window, sending me a stream of texts. Where are you? Text me when you get this. Are you asleep? The messages remained unanswered. She stared at the screen for half an hour until it went dark. Maybe he was just exhausted from the move, she thought. Her thumb hovered over the keyboard, but she couldn't bring herself to type, "Good night." The next morning, she was woken by her alarm and immediately grabbed her phone. Still no new messages. The third day, nothing. The fourth day, nothing. A week later, still nothing. She couldn't take it anymore and went to the campus of the university I was supposed to be attending, right next to Harvard. But the moment she got there, her world came crashing down. The registrar searched the student database for what felt like an eternity before finally shaking her head. Ethan Miller? I'm sorry, there's no student by that name enrolled here. Chloe's heart plummeted. She had watched me fill out my application. We were supposed to be together. If I wasn't here, where could I be? A terrible feeling began to creep over her. She immediately tried calling me, but all she got was the automated message. The number you have dialed is not in service. How could this be happening? She hung up, her hands starting to shake. Chloe, what's wrong? Leo was suddenly standing behind her, holding 2 cartons of milk. Ethan changed his application, she said, her voice tight, and I can't reach him. For a split second, a strange expression flickered across Leo's face, but it was gone as quickly as it appeared. He opened one of the milk cartons and handed it to her, his fingers brushing against the back of her hand. Don't panic, he said soothingly. Let's just wait. Or, I could go with you to the airport and we could ask the airlines. She took the milk but didn't drink it, her eyes glued to her phone. For the next 2 days, Chloe was glued to her phone, calling everyone we knew, asking if they had heard from me. She posted on Facebook asking if anyone had seen me. The post got hundreds of comments, but no one had any idea where I was. Leo stuck by her side the whole time, bringing her food and sitting with her in silence when she was too agitated to talk. On the evening of the 3rd day, they were sitting on the steps outside the library. Leo said he was going to grab them some water and left his phone on the bench beside her. Suddenly, the screen lit up with a new iMessage notification. It was from one of Leo's friends. So Miller really didn't show up? Damn, you're good. Below it, she could see the preview of Leo's reply from the night before. Her fingers clenched into a fist. Heh, that idiot is never coming. Chloe only has eyes for me now. An autumn breeze sent a swirl of dry leaves skittering past her feet. Her hand was shaking as she picked up the phone. She opened the conversation and scrolled up, a cold dread gripping her heart. The phone felt hot in her hand. She looked up and saw Leo jogging back towards her, a plastic bag in his hand and a smile on his face. Chloe, I got you that pastry you like. You should eat something. She quickly put the phone back on the bench and forced a smile as she took the pastry from him. The words from the text messages were seared into her brain, and her heart was hammering against her ribs. She couldn't let him know she had seen them, not yet. She looked at his innocent, smiling face, and for the very first time, she felt a sliver of doubt. Chloe locked herself in her dorm room for 2 days. Her phone screen lit up and went dark, over and over, as she dialed my number more than 100 times. Each time, she was met with the same cold, automated recording. Miss Davis, we can't find any record of Mr. Miller's university applications, nor any recent domestic flight bookings under his name, her family's butler reported over the phone. Is it possible, he asked cautiously, that he is traveling under a different name? Chloe's knuckles were white as she gripped her phone, her thumb tracing over my contact photo again and again. Her eyelashes fluttered. Keep looking, she said, her voice hoarse. She hung up and sank into her desk chair, staring at an open textbook without seeing a single word. The sounds of the ongoing Welcome Week festivities drifted up from the courtyard below, but they sounded muffled and distant, as if happening in another world. The next morning, she was jolted awake by a frantic knocking at her door. It was Leo, holding a bag of breakfast, with dark circles under his eyes. Chloe, you've missed class for 3 days. Your RA came looking for you. Are you sick? She didn't say anything, just moved aside to let him in. Leo set the breakfast on her desk. As he turned to get her a glass of water, an old phone slipped out of his pocket and landed softly on the rug. It was an old, cracked flip phone he'd had before he transferred schools. He always said he kept it as a backup. Her eyes were immediately drawn to the phone. The memory of the texts she had seen at the library was a splinter in her mind, sharp and painful. As she watched him bend down to pick it up, her heart began to pound. I'll get it, she said, snatching it up before he could. The plastic felt cold in her hand. Oh, you don't have to. It doesn't even work anymore, Leo said, his voice suddenly tight as he reached for it. She took a step back, her thumb hitting the power button. The lock screen password was his birthday. She typed it in without thinking. She opened his photo gallery, and her breath caught in her throat. It wasn't photos. It was a series of screenshots of a text conversation. I paid a guy to hack into his application portal weeks ago. I changed his college choice. Even if he came to Boston, he wouldn't be able to enroll anywhere. He'll never be in the same city as Chloe again. Chloe? She feels so guilty and sorry for me right now. She'll believe anything I say. Once I'm settled here, she'll forget Ethan Miller's name soon enough. Chloe's fingers began to shake uncontrollably. A hot flush of rage rushed to her head, followed by an icy chill that left her limbs feeling numb. She remembered the day I was submitting my applications, how I had complained that the system kept giving me a login error. She remembered my panicked phone call later that day. Chloe, I think someone changed my application, I had said, and she had replied, don't be ridiculous. It's probably just a glitch in the system. She remembered all the times she had chosen Leo over me, pushed me away for him. Chloe, stop reading that. Leo lunged for the phone, his fingernails scraping across the back of her hand and leaving angry red welts. She looked up, and the look in her eyes was so cold it made him freeze. She shoved him away, her voice like ice. Explain this to me, now. She shoved the phone in his face, the incriminating words glowing on the screen. You changed his application? You paid someone to hack into his account. He stumbled backward into her desk, his head bowed, his body shaking. I didn't mean to, Chloe. Please, let me explain. Explain what? Her voice was shaking with a rage she had never felt before. Explain how you ruined his life? Or explain how you've been playing the victim this whole time? I was just so scared of losing you, he cried, lunging forward to hug her, but she recoiled in disgust. Ethan has everything. He has a rich family, he has you. All I have is you. If I hadn't done this, you never would have even noticed me. He grabbed her around the waist, his eyes red and desperate, as if terrified she would leave him. So you resorted to this? She said, looking at his tear-stained face with bitter irony. Leo, you saved my life, and I will always be grateful for that. But that does not give you the right to hurt Ethan. Tell me, what did you change his application to? The thought that she had been so kind to him, while he had been plotting to destroy the person she loved most in the world, was like a physical blow, knocking the air from her lungs. I don't remember, he stammered. I just picked a random community college. A community college? The words hit her like a physical blow. She shoved him away from her. Get out. He was still crying, still pleading. Chloe, I know I was wrong. Please, just forgive me this one time. I'll never do anything like this again. She didn't look at him again. She grabbed her jacket and stormed out, slamming the door so hard the walls shook. The motion sensor light in the hallway flickered on, its dim yellow glow illuminating the furious, bloodshot glare in her eyes. She leaned against the wall for a long time, her chest heaving, the metallic taste of rage in her mouth. To think that she had hurt the person she loved most in the world, over and over again, for someone so cruel and deceitful. Chloe searched every community college in the greater Boston area. She cornered administrators and registrars until they had no choice but to curtly inform her, I'm sorry, we have no record of an Ethan Miller here, before shutting their office doors in her face. She had my parents' number saved in her phone, but it took her 3 days to work up the courage to call. My mother's voice was cold. Ethan is not in Boston. He's not in the country. He's already started his semester in Europe. Europe? Chloe's grip on her phone tightened, her knuckles turning white. Mrs. Miller, please, what school did he go to? You have to tell me. He doesn't want you to know, my mother said, her voice turning to ice. Chloe, some mistakes can't be undone. The line went dead, and the dial tone buzzed in her ear like an angry insect. She sank onto the steps of a campus building, watching the autumn leaves drift to the ground, and for the first time in her life, she understood what true despair felt like. She ran her hands through her hair, tugging at the roots, and then, forcing herself into a state of cold calm, she made a decision. Meanwhile, Leo was in a state of panic. He had basked in the warmth of Chloe's affection, and now, faced with her cold hatred, he was terrified. He tried to talk to her again and again, but she ignored him completely. He soon found out that I hadn't gone to a community college at all, but was studying in Europe. In a way, this was good. I was in Europe, she was in the US. There was no way we could ever get back together. But his relief was short-lived. When he saw the plane ticket to Geneva sitting on her desk, he completely lost it. He caught up with her outside her dorm as she was heading to the registrar's office to request a leave of absence. Chloe, are you really going after him? What about me? What about us? There is no us? She cut him off, her voice cold and distant. There never was. The color drained from Leo's face. He clutched his chest, swayed, and then collapsed to the ground. In the past, Chloe would have rushed to his side, cradling his head and calling his name. But now, she just frowned and took a step back, watching him hit the pavement with a dull thud. She didn't even move to help him. Stop it, Leo, she said, looking down at him, her voice completely flat. I'm tired of your games. Leo lay on the ground, his fake sobs catching in his throat. He had never imagined she could be so cruel. It felt like a physical blow, knocking the wind out of him. He couldn't accept it. Ethan doesn't even want you anymore, he shrieked. Why are you still chasing after him? His words hit a nerve. Her eyes blazed with fury. Say that one more time, she snarled. I said, he doesn't want you. Leo screamed, his own eyes red with a mixture of pain and resentment. You know it's true, Chloe. The moment you gave me that spot at Harvard, You lost him forever. A sharp crack echoed in the quiet courtyard as her hand connected with his cheek. He stumbled back, his head ringing, and stared at her in disbelief. Her hand was still raised, and the look in her eyes was pure fire. "Who the hell do you think you are?" she hissed, her voice raw with fury. "To comment on what was between him and me?" The sheer venom in her voice terrified him into silence. He just stood there, his lips trembling, unable to speak. "Take him away," she said, not even glancing at him as she spoke to the bodyguards who had appeared at her side. "And make sure he doesn't go anywhere." They moved forward and hauled the now limp Leo to his feet. He finally snapped out of his shock and began to struggle, screaming, "Chloe, you can't do this to me. I did it all for you. Chloe." His voice faded as they dragged him away, disappearing down the hall. Chloe took a deep breath and turned back to her room. The anger in her eyes had been replaced by a profound weariness and a deep, aching regret. She took out her phone and sent a text to her academic advisor at Harvard. "Leo Vance and I will be taking an indefinite leave of absence to participate in an off-campus research project. Please file the necessary paperwork." The delivery confirmation popped up on her screen. She stared at the closed door, her expression hardening with resolve. "Ethan, I'm so sorry. This time, I swear, I'm gonna get you back." The rain was coming down in sheets. I sighed, staring at the data model on my computer screen. I'd been working late in the lab and had lost track of time. Now, a torrential downpour was hammering against the windows. I packed up my things and walked to the door, only to stare out at the deluge in dismay. It had been perfectly sunny when I left my dorm this morning. I hadn't even thought to bring an umbrella. I was debating whether to make a run for the train station when I heard familiar footsteps behind me. I turned to see Professor Reed standing at the end of the hall, holding a large black umbrella. Her pant cuffs were splattered with mud, and her glasses were fogged over. "Professor Reed?" I asked, surprised. "Didn't you leave hours ago?" I had seen her packing up her laptop around 5. She wiped the rain from her face, her eyes landing on the folder in my hand as she smiled. "I was just leaving campus when it started to pour. I figured you were probably still here, and that you wouldn't have an umbrella, so I came back," she said, holding the umbrella out towards me. "I live near your dorm. Can I walk you home?" I looked at her hair, damp from the rain, and that familiar warmth spread through my chest. "Yeah," I said, "thank you." We walked out into the rain together, side by side. The umbrella was big, but the rain was coming down so hard that we had to walk close together to stay dry. I could feel her shoulder occasionally brushing against mine, a pleasant warmth through the thin fabric of my shirt. I turned my head slightly and could hear the steady rhythm of her breathing, a sound that, mixed with the patter of the rain, felt strangely peaceful. My heart beat a little faster, and I quickly looked away, pretending to be interested in the rain-soaked hedges along the path. The clean, fresh scent of her perfume mixed with the smell of the rain was incredibly comforting. As we reached the corner, she suddenly stopped in front of a flower shop. "Wait here a second," she said, tilting the umbrella to cover me completely as she dashed inside. I stood there for a moment, watching her disappear into the warm, yellow light of the shop. A moment later, she emerged, holding a small bouquet of white roses, their petals still glistening with raindrops. "For you," she said, her smile warm as she handed them to me. "To celebrate your paper being accepted for publication last week. I saw you reading that journal in the library the other day. Your eyes were practically sparkling." I took the flowers, my fingers brushing against hers. I pulled my hand back as if I'd been shocked. The sweet scent of the roses filled the air, and as I looked at the genuine happiness in her eyes, I could feel my face growing warm. "Thank you," I said. "I'd almost forgotten about that." "You shouldn't forget something so important," she said, her expression soft. "Your research is truly groundbreaking." We continued on our way, the silence under the umbrella no longer awkward, but comfortable, and tinged with a subtle sweetness. At that very moment, on the other side of my dorm building, Chloe was standing in the rain, completely drenched. She clutched a printed campus map, having wandered in the downpour for 2 hours before she finally found my building. Rain streamed down her face, her thin shirt plastered to her skin, outlining her proud but pathetic figure. She stared at the entrance to the men's dorm, her eyes bloodshot with a mixture of desperation and anxiety. And then she saw it, the large, black umbrella. Evelyn was holding it, walking me to the entrance of my building. She leaned in and gently brushed a stray piece of hair from my forehead, a gesture that was both natural and intimate. I was looking down, a small smile on my face, a bouquet of flowers in my hands. The image burned itself into Chloe's mind like a branding iron. She clenched her fists so tightly her nails dug into her palms, the pain a dull throb against the roaring in her ears. Her knuckles were white, the veins on the back of her hands standing out in sharp relief. The rain blurred her vision, but she could see it with perfect clarity. The way I looked at Evelyn held a softness, a sense of trust that she had never seen before. Her breath hitched in her throat. She couldn't take it anymore. She burst from the shadows, her voice a raw, desperate cry. "Ethan, Ethan!" The sudden shout made me freeze, the white roses nearly slipping from my grasp. I whipped my head around and saw her, Chloe, standing in the pouring rain, soaked to the bone, her hair plastered to her forehead, her eyes a terrifying shade of red. How had she found me so fast? A wave of dread and revulsion washed over me, and my first instinct was to run. But before I could even move, she was on me, her face contorted in a way I'd never seen before. She grabbed my shoulders, her grip so tight it felt like she was trying to break them. "Ethan, why didn't you tell me?" she demanded, her voice raw and choked with tears. "Why didn't you tell me Leo changed your application? Why did you just leave without a word? Do you have any idea how crazy I went looking for you?" The rain dripped from her chin onto the back of my hand, each drop as cold as ice. Her grip was painful. I winced, trying to pull away. "Chloe, are you insane? Let go of me." "No!" she screamed, her eyes wild and fixated on my face. "Tell me, is it because of her?" She jabbed a finger in Evelyn's direction, her voice dripping with a jealousy so thick you could taste it. "Is she why you're throwing away everything we had? Let him go." Evelyn's voice cut through the rain, calm and firm. She had moved to my side, positioning herself slightly in front of me in a protective stance. She looked directly at Chloe, her gaze cool but unwavering. "I am his professor, not his girlfriend. And even if I were, Ethan has the right to make his own choices. What you are doing right now is harassment. Do I need to call campus security?" Chloe glared at her, her eyes burning. "This is between him and me. It has nothing to do with you." "And I have nothing to do with you," I said, my own voice cutting in, sharp and final. I wrenched my arm from her grasp, my shoulder throbbing where her fingers had dug in. "Chloe, we were done the moment you started choosing Leo over me. We are broken up." She stood there, frozen, as if she couldn't comprehend my words. Rain ran in rivulets down her pale face. "No," she whispered, her lips trembling. "I never agreed to that. Ethan, it's always been you. Please just come home with me. I know I was wrong. I'll get rid of Leo. I'll do anything. I'll give you anything you want." "It's too late," I said, a cold, mirthless smile on my face. "Chloe, I stopped loving you a long time ago. It happened somewhere between all the times you chose him over me." Each word was a dagger, and I watched them sink into her heart. She stumbled backward, her eyes suddenly hollow, as if the life had been drained out of her. "Professor Reed, let's go," I said, turning away from Chloe and speaking quietly to Evelyn. Evelyn nodded, gently taking the flowers from my hand and guiding me towards the entrance of the building. I walked past Chloe without a single glance in her direction, my steps steady and sure. Once we were inside, out of the rain and out of Chloe's sight, I finally let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. My shoulders slumped. I looked at Evelyn, my voice trembling slightly. "Professor, thank you for everything." She handed the flowers back to me and gently brushed a few stray raindrops from my shoulder. Her smile was warm, but her tone was light and teasing. "Protecting my students is part of the job description." Her eyes fell on my shoulder, which was still red from Chloe's grip, and her brow furrowed. "Did she hurt you?" I shook my head. "I'm fine. Go on, get some rest," she said, not pressing the issue. "And call me if you need anything." I nodded and, clutching the bouquet of white roses, headed for the stairs. When I reached the landing, I glanced back and saw that she was still standing there, watching to make sure I got to my room safely. Her silhouette in the dim light of the stairwell was strong and dependable. A small, empty part of my heart felt a little less empty. I turned and went into my room. Only when my door clicked shut did the gentle expression on Evelyn's face harden. She looked down at the persistent figure still standing in the rain below and frowned. Perhaps my words that day had finally gotten through to Chloe, because she began a campaign to atone for her past mistakes. But her attempts at making amends were like a one-woman show, performed to an empty theater. She had my favorite pastries from a bakery back home overnight from the States. The package arrived anonymously, but I refused the delivery, and it was sent right back. She found my class schedule and started showing up to my art history elective, always taking the seat next to me. For the entire 2-hour lecture, I never once looked in her direction. I just took meticulous notes, pretending she wasn't there. The worst was one rainy afternoon when she stood outside my lab building for 3 hours, holding an umbrella, her pants splattered with mud. Through the window, she could see me and Evelyn huddled over a set of blueprints. She watched as I pointed to something and laughed, and as Evelyn leaned in to listen, her finger tapping thoughtfully on the page. The sight of our easy intimacy was like a needle in her eye. There was a time when she and I had been like that, inseparable, sharing everything, closer than anyone. Chloe waited outside until nightfall. When I finally emerged, I walked straight out the side entrance without even glancing in her direction. The days bled into weeks. She stopped attending her classes at Harvard, instead spending her days wandering my campus like a ghost, hoping for a chance to speak to me. And every day, she was treated to the heart-wrenching sight of me and Evelyn walking together down the tree-lined campus paths, our heads bent close together as we discussed our research, or sharing a dessert in the cafeteria, Evelyn casually picking out the bits I didn't like. All those little intimacies that had once been hers, now belonged to someone else. One day, I didn't show up for class and I wasn't in the lab. A knot of fear tightened in Chloe's stomach. I never missed class without a reason. She was terrified something had happened to me. She had her butler track down my new number in Switzerland and immediately called. It rang for a long time before someone finally picked up. It was Evelyn's voice, calm and even. "Hello." Chloe's composure shattered. "Where's Ethan?" she screamed into the phone, her voice shaking violently. "What have you done to him?" "That is none of your concern," Evelyn replied, her voice still perfectly calm. In the background, Chloe could hear the faint sound of a running shower. "What do you mean it's none of my?" The line went dead. The dial tone felt like a hammer blow to her chest. She paced frantically outside the lecture hall, her mind racing with terrible possibilities. It wasn't until that evening that she saw Evelyn's car parked outside my dorm. At that moment, Evelyn was in my apartment, taking care of me. I had a high fever and was delirious, muttering about data points from our latest experiment. She gently placed a cool, damp cloth on my forehead, her movement so light she was barely touching me. She changed the cloth every half hour. When she held a glass of water to my lips, I would drink obediently, like a trusting child. Seeing my chapped, feverish lips, her heart ached. She made me a cup of warm water with honey and patiently fed it to me, one spoonful at a time. In the early hours of the morning, my fever finally started to break. Evelyn, who had been keeping watch over me all night, had fallen asleep, her head resting on the edge of my bed, a damp cloth still clutched in her hand. When I woke up the next morning, sunlight was streaming through a gap in the curtains, falling across her sleeping form. She looked uncomfortable, but she was fast asleep, the dark circles under her eyes a testament to her all-night vigil. I watched her for a long time, my heart pounding in my chest, a warmth spreading through me. I gently draped a blanket over her shoulders. Later that morning, she drove me to campus. She held the car door open for me, a thermos in her other hand. "I made you some oatmeal," she said. "I know you have a sensitive stomach." Just as we pulled up in front of the lecture hall, we saw her, Chloe, standing just a few feet away. Chloe watched as Evelyn adjusted the scarf around my neck, watched as she handed me the thermos, watched as I looked up at her and smiled. It was a weak, post-illness smile, but it held a look of trust and reliance that Chloe had never seen on my face before. In that moment, jealousy coiled around her heart like a venomous snake, and a tidal wave of regret threatened to drown her. She had had so many chances to be the one to take care of me, and she had thrown them all away. She clutched her chest, the pain so intense she could barely breathe. Some things she was finally realizing, once you lose them, they're gone forever. My fever was finally gone. I wasn't fully recovered, but I was worried about falling behind on our project, so I went back to the lab. I was sitting at my station, my face still pale from the illness, when Chloe appeared in the doorway. Her eyes were bloodshot, and she looked like she hadn't slept in days. Her voice was thick with exhaustion. "Ethan, can we please talk? Do you remember when we were kids, and I was afraid of the dark? You used to climb through my window every night and tell me stories until I fell asleep? Or in high school when you were having problems with low blood sugar, and I always kept a chocolate bar in my bag for you? You said you wanted to go to Harvard, so I worked my ass off to be valedictorian, just so I could be with you." I looked up at her, a cold smile playing on my lips. "And then what? Then you gave my umbrella to Leo. You gave the breakfast you made for me to Leo. You gave the Harvard spot that should have been mine to Leo. And when we were both hurt, you ran to him first." My voice was calm, but each word was a needle, piercing her heart. "I know I was wrong," she sobbed, taking a step towards me, her arms outstretched. "I know Leo changed your application. I've dealt with him. He'll never be able to hurt anyone again. Please just give me one more chance. Can't we just go back to the way things were?" "We can't go back," I said, closing the folder in front of me. "Chloe, some things, once they're broken, they can't be fixed. Why are you being so cruel?" she cried, grabbing my wrist, her eyes red and pleading. "Is it because of her? Because of Evelyn? Let go of him." Evelyn was suddenly standing in the doorway, her voice like ice. "Miss Davis, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. You're disturbing my student." Chloe flinched at the warning in her tone, but her eyes remained fixed on me, full of desperation. Evelyn stepped forward and calmly but firmly pried Chloe's fingers from my wrist, stepping between us. "Do I need to call security?" Chloe looked at the two of us standing together, and though it was clear she was reluctant, she finally turned and walked away. Evelyn looked down at me. "Are you all right? Do you want to go home and rest?" I nodded, leaning on her arm for support as I stood up. The combination of the illness and the confrontation had left me feeling drained. Just then, a news alert from the States popped up on Evelyn's phone. Her expression sharpened as she read it, and then she handed the phone to me. The internet back home was in an uproar. A post Leo had made before Chloe dealt with him, full of lies and accusations against me, had been pushed to the top of Twitter's trending topics. People who didn't know the whole story were piling on, accusing me of faking my SAT scores, of stealing someone else's spot to study abroad. They were even claiming that my academic work was only getting published because I was sleeping with my professor. The comments were brutal. "No wonder he got into such a good school. He cheated his way in. What a disgrace. I can't believe the academic world is this corrupt. They should expel him for sleeping his way to the top." I read the comments with a strange sense of calm, but Evelyn's eyes were dark with fury. She vowed to make whoever started this pay. She immediately contacted her legal team and issued a public statement. "Ethan Miller's academic achievements are the result of his own talent and hard work. These accusations are baseless and defamatory, and we will be pursuing legal action against those responsible for spreading them." I didn't hold back either. I posted the screenshots of Leo's texts, the proof that he had paid a hacker to change my application, and the screenshots of his own Facebook posts where he had been subtly mocking and provoking me for months. "I was accepted to Harvard University," I wrote. "Leo Vance illegally accessed my account and changed my acceptance to a community college, which is why I was forced to pursue my education abroad." I then posted links to my published research papers. The evidence was irrefutable. The tide of public opinion turned in an instant. My inbox was flooded with apologies, and the internet turned its collective rage on Leo, calling him a sociopathic parasite. So Leo was the real villain all along. I heard he was on scholarship and Ethan was actually helping him out. No good deed goes unpunished, I guess. Slander like this should be a crime. Chloe saw the news from her car, which was parked, as usual, across the street from my dorm. Seeing that Leo was still trying to ruin my life, even after everything, sent a fresh wave of fury through her. She slammed her fist against the steering wheel. But as she watched Evelyn calmly and efficiently handle the crisis, as she saw the sense of peace and security I had when I was with her, the jealousy and regret that had been simmering inside her boiled over. "We're going back," she told her driver. Her voice was low, and her eyes were burning with a cold, obsessive fury. "Since Leo won't learn his lesson, I'll go back and teach it to him myself. He's about to find out what happens when you cross me." When Chloe arrived back in the States, it was raining. The rain in Boston was different from the rain in Geneva. It was a cold, damp, late autumn rain that hammered against the windows of the Davis family mansion. When she pushed open the door to the guest suite where she had stashed Leo, she was hit with the overwhelming stench of stale liquor and shattered perfume bottles. A priceless crystal lamp was smashed on the floor, red wine was soaked into the velvet carpet, and an original oil painting had been slashed to ribbons. This was all Leo's handiwork. He was huddled in a corner, his hair matted to his face. When he saw her, his eyes first lit up with a flicker of hope, which was quickly replaced by a venomous glare. "Chloe, you're finally back," he sneered. "What happened? Did Ethan dump you again? Is that why you came crawling back to me?" "Shut up." Chloe's voice was colder than the rain lashing against the window. She bent down and picked up a phone from the floor. The screen was still lit, showing the slanderous Twitter post he had made, a photo of me and Evelyn, with a vile caption that had attracted a flood of hateful comments from people who didn't know the truth. "You did this," she said. It wasn't a question, it was a statement. She was gripping the phone so hard the plastic groaned in protest. Leo flinched at the murderous look in her eyes but held his ground. "So what if I did?" he spat. "He took everything from me. Why shouldn't I make his life a living hell?" His words pushed Chloe to the breaking point. She didn't say another word. She simply nodded to her bodyguards, who grabbed him by the hair and began dragging him towards the basement. Leo screamed and thrashed, digging his nails into the arms of the men holding him, but they hauled him mercilessly down into the cold, damp cellar. A bucket of ice-cold water was dumped over his head. He gasped, his body seizing from the shock, shivering so violently he couldn't speak. The icy water trickled down his neck, a cold that seemed to seep into his very bones. "Are you awake now?" Chloe asked, squatting in front of him, her eyes like poisoned daggers. Her expression was grim as she looked him up and down. "Are these hands good for anything besides filth?" A bodyguard seized his wrists, the grip so tight he thought the bones would snap. "First you hack into Ethan's application and ruin his future," Chloe hissed. "Now you spread lies to destroy his reputation. How dare you, Leo?" Faced with the full force of her rage, Leo finally felt a sliver of fear. He didn't dare meet her eyes. Tears mixed with the icy water on his face as his voice trembled. "Chloe, I'm sorry, I was wrong. Please, just let me go. I'll never do it again." "Let you go?" She laughed, a sound completely devoid of warmth. "Who was there to let Ethan go when you were ruining his life?" She stood up and gave a cold, simple order to the men standing by the door. "Break his hands." "No, please don't," Leo screamed. Seeing the deadly seriousness in her eyes, he scrambled backward, his voice raw with terror. "Chloe, I'm begging you. I know I was wrong. Please don't hurt me." The bodyguards moved forward, their faces impassive. One pinned his shoulders to the floor while the other picked up a heavy iron pipe. Two sickening cracks echoed in the small room, followed by a scream so primal it barely sounded human. Leo's wrists were bent at impossible angles, and blood began to pool on the concrete floor beneath them. Chloe stood and watched him writhe on the floor, her expression a blank mask. She thought of how these were the hands that had typed the code to hack my account, the hands that had written those vicious lies. She thought of how, because of this pathetic creature, she had pushed away the only person she had ever truly loved. The rage inside her burned hotter. "It's not enough," she said, her voice a raw whisper. "Keep going." The bodyguards glanced at each other, a flicker of hesitation in their eyes, but they obeyed, raising the pipe again. The sickening thud of the pipe hitting flesh and bone mixed with Leo's agonized screams, echoing in the small room. The sounds grew weaker and weaker, until he was just a broken heap on the floor, a final, choked gasp ending in a spray of blood. Chloe turned and walked away without a backward glance. Behind her, the sounds of the beating continued. She drove straight to Harvard and slammed a thick file onto the dean's desk. It contained all the evidence, proof of Leo's hacking, the records of his payments, and screenshots of his defamatory posts. "I want him expelled," she said, her voice calm but carrying an unmistakable threat. "And I want a public statement detailing everything he's done. If the university fails to act, this file will be on the front page of every newspaper in the country by morning." The dean looked at the irrefutable evidence, then at the icy resolve in Chloe's eyes, and nodded. As she walked out of the administration building, the rain was still falling. She looked up at the gray, weeping sky and felt no triumph, no satisfaction, only a vast, hollow emptiness. She had destroyed Leo, but it wouldn't bring me back. The cold Boston rain could fall forever, but it would never be enough to wash away her regret, or to warm the heart she had shattered beyond repair. The online firestorm eventually died down. The malicious lies about me were replaced with articles praising my academic work. But the memory of that vicious, public attack was like a thin sheet of ice over my heart, refusing to melt. I sat in the lab, staring blankly at a paper on my screen, my fingers resting motionless on the keyboard. I didn't even notice Evelyn come in. "Penny for your thoughts?" she asked softly, placing a mug of hot chocolate next to my hand. Its warmth seeped into my skin. I looked up and managed a weak smile. "It's nothing." She could see the exhaustion in my eyes, but she didn't press. She just turned, stepped out of the lab, and made a quick phone call. When she came back, she handed me a plane ticket. "I've cleared your schedule for the week," she said. "We're going somewhere." And just like that, without even knowing our destination, I went with her. When our plane landed in Zurich, the snow-capped peaks of the Alps were gleaming in the sun. I stood on the shore of the lake, watching the mountains reflected in the crystal-clear water, and felt the weight that had been pressing on me for weeks begin to lift. "My parents live here," Evelyn said, her tone casual as she affectionately adjusted my scarf, which had been ruffled by the wind. "They'd love to have you over for dinner." The Reed family villa was nestled on a hillside, surrounded by fields of lavender. The moment we walked in, Evelyn's mother took my hands in hers, her eyes sparkling with delight. "We've heard so much about you. Evelyn has never brought a young man home before. All she ever does is work." Her father chuckled, handing me a cup of hot tea. "She's a genius in the lab, a full professor at 23, but when it comes to her personal life, she's completely clueless." For the first time since I'd met her, I saw the ever-composed Evelyn blush. I couldn't help but smile. Her parents had prepared an incredible meal. Over dinner, her mother kept piling food onto my plate while regaling me with embarrassing stories from Evelyn's childhood, while her father, and I had a fascinating conversation about historical preservation. The whole evening was so warm and welcoming, it made my heart ache in a good way. It was a kind of warmth and ease I had never experienced before. There were no ulterior motives, no hidden agendas, just genuine kindness and acceptance. After dinner, Evelyn suggested we take a walk, and we went up the hill behind the house to look at the stars. The sky was a black velvet canvas, studded with diamond-bright stars. The Milky Way was a shimmering ribbon across the darkness, so close it felt like you could reach out and touch it. The breeze smelled of pine and damp earth. "Ethan," Evelyn said softly. She had stopped walking and turned to face me. The light of the stars was reflected in her eyes, making them shine even brighter than the sky above. "These last few months, spending time with you, it's been very special to me," she said, her voice quiet and just a little bit shaky. "I don't want to just be your professor anymore," she continued, her voice gaining strength, "or just your research partner." She paused, and in the silence, I could hear my own heart beating faster. "I want to be the person you spend the rest of your life with. I want to wake up next to you every morning. I want to be there with you for every breakthrough, and I want to see the world with you." My heart skipped a beat. I thought of all the small moments, the way she had silently handed me a wipe in the lab, the sight of her holding the umbrella over me in the rain, the smile in her eyes at the museum, the undisguised concern on her face when I was sick. All those quiet moments of kindness had, without my realizing it, come together to form a river of affection that had washed away the last of my defenses. I looked up into her star-filled eyes and nodded, my own eyes suddenly wet. "Okay," I said, my voice thick with emotion, but clear and certain. She looked stunned for a second, and then a look of pure joy spread across her face. She reached out and pulled me into a hug, holding me as if I were something precious and fragile. "Thank you, Ethan," she whispered, her voice trembling. We held each other tightly, under the vast, silent river of stars, the scent of lavender on the breeze. It felt like in that one moment, we were making up for all the time we had lost. I held her close, feeling the steady beat of her heart against my chest, and I finally understood. Real love wasn't a scorching, all-consuming fire. It was this, a quiet, steady glow, like the stars above us, gentle and constant, bright enough to light the way for the rest of my life. 4 years later, I was graduating with my PhD. The day of the ceremony was beautiful, the sun streaming through the stained glass windows of the university's main hall, casting colorful patterns on the floor. I stood at the podium in my cap and gown, chosen to give the valedictory address. I looked out at the crowd, my gaze calm and steady. And finally, I said, "I want to give a special thanks to Professor Evelyn Reed." My voice was clear as I looked at her, my heart full of a deep, quiet gratitude. I want to thank her not only for her academic guidance, but for teaching me that a true partnership isn't about sacrifice or dependence. It's like a well-designed structure, where two parts fit together to create something stronger than either could be alone. The hall filled with applause. Evelyn sat in the front row, looking elegant and poised in a tailored suit, her usually serious expression replaced by a smile that lit up her whole face. In her open palm rested a small, silver ring. The face of it was intricately carved to look like a spiral galaxy, a nod to the first research topic we had ever discussed. She had spent 3 sleepless nights in the university's metalworking studio, crafting it herself as my graduation present. When I stepped down from the podium, she rose to meet me. She took my diploma from my hands, her own hand covering mine in a gesture of quiet possession. No words were necessary. Everything we needed to say was in the look we shared. In the crowd, one figure stood out, Chloe. She was there as a representative of a major architectural firm that partnered with the university, but she looked completely out of place. She watched me and Evelyn standing together in the spotlight, accepting an award from the university president. She saw the way the corners of my eyes crinkled when I smiled, and for a moment, she saw the carefree boy she used to know. But the image faded, replaced by the man I had become, a man who was no longer hers. After the ceremony, as the crowd began to thin, Chloe stepped in front of us, blocking our path. She was dressed in a sharp, tailored suit, her hair pulled back in a severe bun, but nothing could hide the deep, weary sadness in her eyes. "Ethan," she said, her voice surprisingly steady, "I wish you all the happiness in the world." I looked at her, and felt no anger, no resentment, only a polite distance. "Thank you, Chloe," I said. "I hope you find your happiness too." She nodded, her gaze shifting from me to Evelyn, who stood quietly by my side, her protective stance and the adoration in her eyes impossible to miss. A small, sad smile touched Chloe's lips, as if a great weight had finally been lifted from her shoulders. She turned to leave. Just then, a soft sound made her turn back. She saw Evelyn rise up on her toes and press a soft, gentle kiss to my cheek. Sunlight glinted off our clasped hands as Evelyn slid the silver ring onto my finger. It was a perfect fit. I looked down at her, my heart overflowing with love, and pulled her into my arms, holding her close. In that moment, Chloe felt as if she were rooted to the spot. We hadn't even noticed she was still there. We just walked away, hand in hand, lost in our own world. She stood there, alone, a sharp, twisting pain in her heart. An old, scarred, overwound in her heart felt like it had been ripped open again. But this time it wasn't a sharp, stabbing pain. It was a dull, hollow ache. She finally understood. I wasn't punishing her. I wasn't waiting for her. I had truly, genuinely moved on. And in the new life I had built, there was no room for her. She stood frozen, watching as we walked away, my arm wrapped around Evelyn's waist. She saw us lean in and whisper to each other, saw me laugh and playfully tap Evelyn's shoulder. It was so easy, so natural. She watched until we disappeared around a corner. Only then did she slowly raise a hand to cover her face. A single, hot tear escaped through her fingers and fell to the polished floor, leaving a small, dark spot. She finally had to admit it to herself. The obsession that had consumed her for more than a decade was finally over. In the distance, the sound of the campus chapel bells rang out, a solemn, final note on the end of an era. It was the sound of her finally, truly letting go. After witnessing my happiness, Chloe returned to the States. The Boston winter felt colder than ever before. She locked herself in an empty family mansion and drank herself into a stupor for 3 straight days. The floor was littered with empty bottles, and the expensive Persian rug was pockmarked with cigarette burns. She was sprawled on the couch, her silk blouse hopelessly wrinkled, her eyes bruised with exhaustion. The glittering lights of the city skyline filtered through a gap in the curtains, casting a fractured, mocking light on her bloodshot eyes. "You useless girl!" Her father's voice boomed through the room as he slammed the door open, his body trembling with rage at the sight of her. "I warned you not to get taken in by that Leo boy, but you wouldn't listen," he roared. "Now Ethan is gone, and you're wallowing in this filth. What good is regret now?" Her mother stood behind him, dabbing at her red-rimmed eyes. "You two were inseparable. You're the one who threw him away." Chloe buried her face in her arms, a choked sob escaping her throat. It was true. She had lost me. It was all her fault. It felt like a physical hole had been carved in her chest, and only alcohol could numb the agonizing pain. Only by staying drunk could she forget, for a few blessed hours, that I was gone for good. After her parents left, the house fell silent again. In the dead of night, a shadowy figure slipped the lock on the back door and crept inside. It was Leo. He was skeletal, his broken wrists held in place by crude splints, his face a mask of purple and blue bruises. After Chloe's men were done with him, he'd been dumped in a psychiatric hospital. But the online mob had found him, and the constant harassment had driven him to escape. He clutched a rusty paring knife he'd found in a dumpster. The living room reeked of stale alcohol. Chloe was passed out over the coffee table, muttering something in her sleep. Leo leaned closer. "Ethan," she was murmuring, "don't go. I'm so sorry." She lifted her head, her eyes bleary and unfocused. A slow, tearful smile spread across her face. "Ethan, you came back. I knew you'd come back for me." She stumbled towards him, throwing her arms around him. "Ethan, I was wrong," she sobbed. "I was so wrong. Can we please start over? I'll give you anything." He stood rigid in her embrace, listening to her whisper my name, feeling the warmth of her body that was meant for someone else. The resentment and jealousy he had suppressed for so long finally erupted. "I'm not Ethan," he shrieked, shoving her away. He plunged the knife into her chest. "Look at me, Chloe. It's me. It's Leo. I did everything for you. Why do you only care about him?" The smile froze on her face. She looked down at the handle of the knife protruding from her chest, at the blood that was already soaking through her white shirt. She didn't seem to feel any pain. She just looked at him, her expression blank, her lips forming my name one last time. "Ethan." Leo completely snapped. He pulled the knife out and stabbed her again. "Go to hell," he screamed. "If I can't have you, no one can." Her blood sprayed across his face. He smiled, then lit a book of matches and tossed it onto the alcohol-soaked couch. The flames erupted, spreading instantly to the curtains and the rug. "Let's go to hell together, Chloe," he shrieked, his laughter echoing in the rapidly filling room. "Now you'll have to look at me forever." The fire consumed the house, thick black smoke pouring from the windows. Chloe lay on the floor, her consciousness fading. In her final moments, she saw a vision of me, standing under a cherry tree, smiling and holding out my hand, just like in the old days. "Ethan," she whispered, a faint smile of release on her lips as she drew her last breath. By the time the sirens of the fire trucks and police cars cut through the night, the mansion was a raging inferno. The police dragged Leo from the wreckage, his body blackened and burned, but still raving. She's mine. No one can take her from me. I finally won. Ethan, I won. They handcuffed him and put him in the back of a squad car. He stared out the window at the inferno, his eyes hollow, as if he were watching his own twisted, desperate life go up in flames. When the paramedics carried Chloe out, she was covered in blood, but after performing CPR, they found a faint pulse and rushed her to the intensive care unit. The tragic saga that had begun with a misguided obsession had finally, violently, come to an end. I was at the museum with Evelyn, going over the checklist for a new exhibit, when my mother called. Her voice was a mixture of anger and sadness as she told me that Leo was in prison, and that Chloe, after being stabbed, had died in the fire. The pen in my hand stilled, leaving a small blot of ink on the page. The sun was warm on my face, but a chill crept up my spine. The girl who had been a part of my life since I was a toddler, the girl I had loved and hated and finally moved on from, was gone, erased from the world in the most violent way imaginable. Do you want to go back? Evelyn asked, her hand gently covering mine. I was silent for a long time. Finally, I nodded. Yes, I should go back, to say goodbye. The ruins of the Davis mansion were still surrounded by police tape. Mr. Davis looked like he had aged 20 years overnight. Mrs. Davis just sat in the funeral home, weeping silently. My own mother held my hand and told me that Chloe had fought for her life in the ICU for 7 days, but in the end, she hadn't made it. At the memorial service, Mrs. Davis, her hair now streaked with gray, clung to my hand, her tears falling freely. She was calling for you, she whispered. Right up to the end, she was calling your name. I stood in front of her portrait, a large, black and white photo. She was 17 in the picture, wearing a white blouse, her smile wide and carefree. Evelyn had come with me, and not knowing what to say, she simply put her arms around me and held me. Evelyn and I each placed a bouquet of white lilies in front of the portrait. I didn't feel a soul-crushing grief, just a quiet sense of finality. When it was over, I bowed to Mr. and Mrs. Davis. Please, take care of yourselves, I said softly. After the funeral, the last tie between me and Chloe was severed. When we returned to Geneva, Evelyn didn't press me to talk. She just took me to our favorite spot by the lake. The wind was blowing through my hair when she came up behind me and wrapped her arms around my waist. It's over now, she whispered. I leaned back against her and nodded. Yeah, it's over. Life slowly returned to normal. With Evelyn's encouragement, I submitted my restoration project to an international competition, and it won. My name started appearing in academic journals. Our families started having dinner together on the weekends. Evelyn's mother taught me how to make Swiss pastries, and our fathers would spend hours talking about everything from business to their golf games. 3 years later, on a beautiful spring day, we were married in a small chapel on the banks of the Seine. It wasn't a large, extravagant affair, just our closest friends and family. I stood at the altar in a simple suit, a red rose that Evelyn had grown in her own garden pinned to my lapel, waiting for the woman I loved to walk down the aisle. Halfway through the ceremony, a lawyer I didn't recognize delivered a small box. He said it was from Chloe's estate, with instructions that it be delivered on my wedding day. I opened it. Inside was a debit card and a note, written in a shaky, unfamiliar hand. A wedding present. It's the last thing I can do for you. Beneath the card was a faded tie. She had given it to me for my 18th birthday, bought with 6 months' worth of her allowance. I had thought it was too garish at the time and had only worn it once. And under the tie, one last note, in her familiar, messy script. I hope my boy will always live in the sun. I picked up the tie. The fabric was old and delicate, but it still smelled faintly of her perfume. I handed the box to Evelyn. Can you put this away for me? I asked, my voice calm. The past is the past. She took the box and placed it on a nearby table, then took my hand in hers, her touch warm and steady. As the priest pronounced us married, the church bells began to ring. Sunlight streamed through the stained glass windows, dappling our joined hands in colored light. I looked at Evelyn, and her eyes were shining like the stars on the night she proposed. We smiled at each other and walked out of the chapel, hand in hand. The air outside was sweet with the scent of flowers, and in the distance, the Seine glittered in the sun, a long, bright path stretching out before us. The loves and losses of the past had finally been laid to rest, smoothed over by the gentle hand of time. Our future was just beginning.